I just started, so start over.
Living in Highland Park, New Jersey, while my wife did her work on her PhD at Rutgers in English as a teaching assistant, though I had the care of our son David, I was able, by getting up at 5:30 in the morning, to finish a novella I had been working on for several years, which I later used as in place of a master's thesis at University of Connecticut. And when I was studying creative writing at Harvard, later teaching it and expository writing, in my class, taught by Monroe Engel, who was a close friend of Saul Bellows and a novelist himself, was a great writer, African American writer by the name of William Melvin Kelly. Now, this young man was extremely prolific. He wrote about 6 novels, one of them about the time when the blacks got tired of being discriminated against and just left, and just left the cities. They left the promised land and went someplace else. And were not to be found, and never to be humiliated or exploited again the way they had been. And he wrote a novel called Them, and several others. He used to write listening to Bessie Smith, blues, or maybe Billie Holiday. He just was a terrific force. I mean, he was a great writer, very prolific, and writing about subjects that were absolutely crucial to the expression of the drama that was going on in the early 60s, late 50s, and then we're getting into the Vietnam War era. I made a friend who was a very good composer who had come from Guyana, British Guiana, which was sort of north and west of Brazil or Colombia on the South American continent. Ingram Fox. I didn't. I don't think I ever heard his music, but he's very hospitable and would invite me to parties at his wonderful apartment on Riverside Drive, overlooking the Hudson, filled with marvelous art collection and furniture, and a beautiful wife too that I once took to Lincoln Center to the New York City Ballet, and or maybe it was one of the last of Stravinsky's concerts at Lincoln Center. Ingram was a really nice man, and at this party, which was splendid, lots of great food to eat, in walks Bill Kelly. I hadn't seen him for months and months, maybe 5 or 6 years. And you see, this is one of my nights out in New York City. I could catch the bus on the bridge across the river. I mean, across the street from uh, uh, Lincoln Park Avenue. This was in Highland Park, across from my place, my apartment in Highland Park. Walk across the bridge, catch a bus to New York, and at Port Authority, catch a bus back and late at night after parties and see my friends. Anyway, so I was at one of these parties. You know what Bill Kelly Malcolm X had been assassinated. Now, the going theory was that he had been killed by black Muslims from Chicago. I think he was a member of one of the churches of the great leader of the black Muslim movement in Chicago. And somehow it was in a misunderstanding with one of them, and they sent people out to kill him. He was in a church in Manhattan giving a talk. Then Bill Kelly said that he felt that there were other people who had been involved. He identified them. I won't mention any names or any conjectures about that. Now, he had been sent by the group who were surrounding Malcolm X before he was died as an emissary to Africa, because he was getting well known as a novelist, and he had a good political sense. So I don't know what exactly he was doing in Africa. Maybe he was dealing with the ANC or Mandela's people. Already apartheid was in full bloom. And so he had other theories about who was responsible for the assassination of Malcolm. And Alex Haley, of course, who had made a huge amount of money on the autobiography of Malcolm X, decided he wanted to come back to Tennessee, where his family had land up northwest of Knoxville, maybe in Contra County. So he spent a lot of time as a child with his grandparents in Tennessee, in East Tennessee, in the hill country, northwest of Knoxville. So he arrives in Knoxville, and with enough money in his pocket to be able to purchase a place, found probably the nicest house in Sequoia Hills along the Tennessee River near Cherokee Boulevard, a big stone house. And he went and knocked on people's doors, and he asked people, would they mind if he and his family moved into this particular house? They said they'd be proud to have him. He told him who he was. And some people, I guess, had actually heard of him by that time in Knoxville. So he was welcomed to Knoxville. They said it would be an honor to have him living in Sequoia Hills near Cherokee Boulevard and the Tennessee River. So he did move into that house. I never saw him down there or met him. I never met Alex Haley. He had made a roots trip to Africa, which I think became a TV series, and it's a documentary. And I myself just took a roots trip to a place called Orne, Holland, which is on a canal. It's the harbor where they started the East India Company centuries ago. And my big question was, why did my ancestors ever live this region? It's so wonderful. My wife Pat and I had a great time there. In the house of Ward Fisher and his daughters, and in exchange with us stayed in our house in Saint Michel de Libe, Lower Normandy. And I had a great time here. The young women played our Bechstein piano. They're very good painters themselves, and loved to be in a house full of painters. You know, they're good young Dutch, well-educated women, terrific painters. They started out doing a lot of children's art. There were some good painters, contemporary painters, who were doing a lot of children's art. And there was one I particularly liked, Schlitters, spelled with a J, silent J. And as you know, the G in the great artist's name is Van Gogh. It's a hard language to pronounce, but they're wonderful people. And Ward and his daughters all speak English. And they're just the most lovely young women. I said, his father was a rose grower, and I said, well, you got some perfect roses right there. Tell your father. They're very lovely, lovely women. And I gave them one picture unframed, which I'd had on the piano, where the music usually goes on the piano rack. And they liked a lot of my pictures. They took digital camera record of every picture they liked in the house. And then we sent it on to one of their friends who's named Louis, a very good artist, and his wife Herda, who took us to up to his studio. And also we had a Rhine wine at his house, and some things to eat, which Herda served. Apparently her daughters are absolutely beautiful. Maud says the place to live is Amsterdam because they're most beautiful in the world are there. I can believe it. I saw some of them walking in Orn. Orn is Hoorn, and its symbol is an English horn. Cour anglais. I played French horn, but they call that cour anglaise. Of course, English horn is actually a little bit like the oboe, and somewhat shaped like a clarinet with a little black bulb of a bell on it. So the symbol is like a hunting horn, which mine happened to have been stolen and removed from our house in Cambermere and built in 1542, called Le Frenet, or the ashes, and meaning ash trees, not something you find in the fireplace. I'm going to get another one. In Paris, I found a place. Apparently, there's a good store for used instruments or old instruments on Rue de Rome near Gare Saint-Lazare. I'm going to try to get a cornet or a French horn with valves maybe. And kept playing again because that was my life, playing French horn, trumpet, and bugle. They took a bugle off the Christmas tree when I was about 6 years old. I blew a big blast on it. My uncle covered his ears and he said, keep that away from that kid. He can just blast your eardrums out. I could blow even with the lip of a little 6-year-old. Used to play the bugle all the time. But unfortunately, the bell of my bugle was smashed flat and not very pretty, but my horn was beautiful, and that got smashed too because I didn't have a good carrying case, a canvas carrying case I could put over my shoulder. And if you didn't put it in the case, which protected it, and very heavy, you could ruin your horn, and mine got ruined that way. It was an Alexander horn that with my father, bought in Mainz, Germany, and brought back to the U.S. Terrific double horn with a valve that could play an F or B. Of course, trumpet is in B flat. Horns are in F, and it had a valve I could switch to the other valves, a set of valves, and play in another key, and the thumb valve. It was a wonderful horn. It's great for the breathing, to blow, a wind instrument. I never tried flute, so I have tried recorder. It's not easy. My father could play recorder, and he had a wooden flute, as well as his silver flute, his Powell and his Haynes flute. the the pal Davy inherited and doesn't play it. Sort of a waste. Maybe Amanda could learn it. She's playing violin and piano now. Great girl, my beautiful granddaughter, of whom I'm so proud. Um, Sent her a nice Christmas card. A beautiful, beautiful girl. Anyway, that I'd like to go on the second part of this uh, reminiscence about how my fathers put on a contemporary music festival in April of 1947, the year we moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, when he started the Fine Arts Department and was given the National Symphony Orchestra conduct an amateur orchestra, which he made into a semi-professional orchestra, a very competent orchestra, with sold-out houses, great programs, wonderful soloists, better than a lot of celebrity series, and conducted for 25 years. I told the story about his rage when his orchestra revolted against him as he was getting older. How I got him to talk to the coadjutor Bishop William Sanders, who convinced him, said that you've done such a great job here. You've given your whole life to this orchestra, creating a musical culture. Why not just retire after you finish the Ninth Symphony? He was doing a cycle, the nine symphonies of Beethoven, cycle by memory. And he announced his retirement as he was receiving the applause from the audience after the Ninth Symphony. And then there were tributes written to him. And all of this, High Hurdle, Fontana Lake, are really, they constitute not just biographical story of my father's life. Growing up in Argos, Indiana, going to Northwestern, going to Vienna for study with great people like Schoenberg, Franz Schmidt, and others. But basically, it's a tribute to my father. And at this music festival in 1947, were very famous people like Virgil Thompson, Roy Harris, some of our greatest original American composers, and also the people that he went on his woodwind quintet tour, sponsored by Nelson Rockefeller. So 46 concerts in Latin America, one in Trinidad, and one in Mexico City, and in all the major countries, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and Colombia, and Peru. The woodwind had 46 concerts in something like 50 days. That was 1944. We went back as a family, invited by the Chilean government, so my father could conduct the National Symphony Orchestra Philharmonic in Santiago. I learned Spanish as a 7-year-old. It wasn't kept up, so I lost it all. I'm trying to get it back now. So I go on, and that's my spiel for today about William Kelly, the assassination of Malcolm X, Ingram Fox, and my father's Contemporary Music Festival in 1947, which I attended with my sister. At one point, one of the violinists of the lyric quartet said to us who were listening in the audience, I think we outnumber them. He was referring to the audience. I mean, Knoxville had not developed its musical taste or been educated sufficiently as there would be by my father's efforts to get together enough people to form a good audience for this contemporary music festival, where some extraordinary pieces were played by very original composers, American composers like Carl Ruggles, and some of my father's best students like John Watt, Richard Trisell, or Gilbert Trisell. From his teaching of composition, flute, counterpoint, conducting, and musical theory, he developed a whole group of important original Knoxville composers and musicians that basically educated people who went to the Grand Ole Opry so they knew harmony, could arrange their own music, like Johnny Cash. He never taught Johnny Cash, but I think he did maybe teach Dolly Parton for a brief period. And there's some great talent out of East Tennessee. And he was aware of that, and he with Mary Barnacle recorded a lot of the music for a music sort of an ethnography project, which they did at the University of Tennessee, trying to get some of the original Scotch-Irish folk music down on paper, or at least recorded in a primitive way, not with good Ampex recorders, but tape recorders, but was the technology of the day and after 1947. And later he was by the Tennessee Senate and House of Representatives. He was made composer laureate of the state of Tennessee for life. And that means that he's the man who was saying he was the best composer, and you're comparing him to all those people who many of them made up their own music, like Earl Scruggs, a great banjo player, and some of the great guitarists down there, Gibson and many others. And the singers like the Carter sisters, the Carter family, from the hills of Tennessee near Knoxville. Everybody could bring their trucks in with their vegetables and come in, pull up along at Market Square, along the Market Building, which they stupidly later tore down. There were little beer joints all around Market Square, and all these little pickup trucks was full of vegetables and fruits from their farms up in the hills. I mean, a lot of red clay country, not the best for growing anything, but what our friend Laura Durand, a geographer, said, I mean, the thing that grows best in Tennessee are trees. And of course, we need trees to keep the planet fresh, the air good in the stratosphere. When it's getting worse and worse, I mean, pretty soon the health costs of children with asthma will be horrendous. It'll be terrible for old people. Our whole clean air policy's gone out the window because of fossil fuels, but I hear that there's going to be zero sales of fossil fuels soon, which is going to hurt us because we're in their oil business. But so what? I'd rather have clean water, clean air, so you can go to your tap and get a decent drink of water without buying bottled water. And that's all I have to say now. Thank you very much. Nicholas! Done.